Hey everybody, welcome to one more round. Today I'm very excited. I've actually got my pastor, good friend Randy Wolf with me, which is an honor because he just got done writing an amazing book, Resetting, which I read a lot, as most of you know if you watch this. And this is probably the top 10 books I've read in the last decade, and very timely for me. But Randy, he's a creator, a writer, an author, a teacher, a trainer, a mentor, a relationship business coach. He's married for how many years?
Over 30 years.
Over 30 years, got 6 children. And one of the things I've grown to admire as I've gotten to know you is your ability to tell stories to drive home a point. Now, I was mentioning this before, but reading as much as I do and listening to podcasts and all that stuff, there are certain people that have a gifting for that. Patrick Bet-David, guy's got a gifting for that. And Male's got a gifting for that.
Yeah.
You've got a gifting for that. And as you read this book, if you read Resetting, you're going to notice that there are so many great stories in there, but are all very poignant in the point they're getting to. And it just drives it home. So glad to have a conversation today. And, thanks for coming on.
Great to be here.
Yeah. So a lot of my audience probably doesn't know you. So I'd love to kind of just share with them your background, where you come from, how you got into being a pastor, and then we'll get into the book, so where all that comes from. So.
Great. Yeah, I was raised in Santa Barbara, California, so spent most of my time on the beach, which is where I love to be. It was cool because my parents were wealthy, but I didn't know that. We lived in a house by the foothills. It was about 2,100 square feet, 7 of us kids lived there. Mm-hmm. And we just, went to school and enjoyed life and just had a great, simple life. And I watched my dad, who was a great businessman, started his own partnership with 2 other guys and built it up to one of the most promising partnerships in Santa Barbara.
Wow.
And as they were building it, I watched him kind of reach areas where he would tap out, or reach areas where he would reach beyond where he was at. He had 2 endeavors, one about a $350,000 endeavor, wanted to buy a TV station, wanted to try and get all the local pastors on and get some kind of unity. Didn't really work out. A couple other investments, another $500,000 one. And I'm like, these are great ideas, but it would have been great to have someone there to kind of just check him and go, hey, this is a great idea, but it's probably not the right idea for right now.
Yeah.
And like the radio station, in Santa Barbara, there were so many people that were at odds with each other, churches at odds with each other, mm-hmm. that it literally had this division in the city.
Yeah.
And he decided, well, I'll buy the station. And I watched him and I was like, there was no one to go, hey, that's a great idea, Walt, but it's not for Santa Barbara. They're not going to buy into it. And so as I kind of grew up, I kind of looked at, what do I want to do in life? Mm-hmm. And I kind of was all over the map. Mm-hmm. And so he said, well, let's take you through this inventory that we'll pay for, and it'll figure out what you want to do. So I went out to UCSB, University of California, Santa Barbara, took this inventory very much in depth, and it said at the end of the inventory, mechanical engineer.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, that's what I'll do. My grandfather was one, and so I headed off to school to become a mechanical engineer. And I did all the core classes like Chemistry 1, Chemistry 3, Physics, Calculus. And about 2 years in, he looked at me and he said, I know you're doing this for me, but I don't think your heart's in it. He goes, why don't you take some time off and go to Bible school for a year and figure out what you really wanted to do? So I went off to Bible school. It was just for a year, then to go back and finish my degree. And I ended up going to South America, playing basketball for a little bit, semi-pro ball, came back, and with the idea of, okay, I'll complete my degree. And a friend of mine said, well, have you ever thought about being a youth pastor? And I'm like, I like youth, but nah, I don't want to do that. And that pretty much began the beginning of my journey, just trying to help people. And so I started with young people. And I love it because young people are really our future. And so for me, it was like I get to be a part of helping the next generation set their lives in such a manner that they're setting themselves up for success. And then I did that for a few years. And then I felt like the Lord said, I want to make you a pastor. I'm like, I love working with youth. And then I started realizing, what if I worked with families? that would be even better, because instead of just helping youth, we could set up the next generation by helping the families become better at what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it's always been about this evolving, helping others, which is kind of how I got into helping and coaching businessmen and women. It was like, I want to help people become the best picture of who they are, the best version of themselves.
What are some of the common things you find that businessmen and women struggle with and that you are able to help them kind of get out of?
One of the things is they have limits. And those limits, I find, are really a lot in their thinking and their value. They look at themselves and they say, you know, I can sell $1 million of annuities a year, or I can sell 2 million, but I can't sell 5. And so my job is to help them see that, yeah, you can. If you can do 2, then we can stretch you to 3.5 next year. We just have to add some things in place. We have to add some things that will stretch your thinking, produce a better value of who you see yourself to be, and realize, wait, I can do this.
Yeah.
I learned that, I think, in sports, because at the end of the game, there are certain guys that want the ball and other guys that panic. You know, it's like, I don't want the ball. I don't want to lose.
Yeah.
And I realized the guys that want the ball are guys that have really convinced themselves, I feel like I can make the shot most of the time. So if they miss, it's like, hey, this is the one time I missed. But they're willing to take it the next time. So I really see businessmen and women as they want to take that shot, but a lot of them aren't confident. So how can I get them confident to take that shot?
You know, that's a really interesting point. 'Cause I'm a huge basketball fan. I know you are. In fact, you played in college too, didn't you?
Yeah, played in college.
So you're way better than me already. But being a basketball fan, like, I think of great teams, right? And you look at, everybody goes to the Bulls, right? It's an easy one. Michael Jordan, obviously confident to take that last shot. Scottie Pippen, confident to take that last shot. Dennis Rodman wouldn't take that last shot. Steve Kerr would take that last shot. Bill Winnington wouldn't take that last shot. But you look at Rodman, you look at Winnington, and they've got incredible skill, right? Otherwise, you don't make it to the NBA. Nobody gets the NBA without incredible skill. Go watch a CBA game sometime, and you're like, oh my God, these are the best people I've ever seen. And they're the D League, right?
Yeah.
But it's because they've limited themselves in the fact that they can't make the shot.
Yeah.
The reality is they probably can, but it's a mindset, it's a mentality. And I think that's something, you know, to your point with business people, it's so true. Like, if they were just to switch their mentality to what can I achieve?
Yeah.
And if I don't have the skill set, or I'm not there mentally now, how do I up my skill set or up my thinking to get there? And you talked about thinking big in the book, which is awesome. So you find a lot of guys kind of self-limit themselves more so.
One of the things I discovered, which is amazing, is everyone hears this name and they always equate it to Big Shot Bob, Robert Orr. But what they don't realize is what made Big Shot Bob, was the belief that someone else had in him. And he said this one time when he was interviewed. I figured if Kobe threw me the ball, he believed enough in me to make that shot. I could believe in myself. And I started realizing this is contagious. I think most people live way below their level of who they're called to be and who the potential they have to be, because no one is invested in them. No one has sat down and said, okay, let's look at why you're not getting to that next level. And then looks at, let's make it easy to get to that next level. You know, the idea is like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Right. How do you get to the next level? One step at a time, adding one more thing to what you're doing. So you're not doing this major overhaul. You're just adding little things to what you're doing.
Yeah.
You can say, I can sell this product. Can you really sell that product? Do you believe you belong at the table? Do you believe that you belong with the giftings and abilities to do that? If you do, if you miss the shot, you're going to get up and shoot it again. You're not going to get upset. A lot of people realize when they miss a shot, they withdraw in.
Right.
They realize, I can't get to that next level. And so a lot of what we do is we take apart, you know, as I meet with them, we talk with them. It's usually about 45 minutes, the session to an hour, where we start looking at that. Maybe it's the fact that they don't believe they belong at the table. Maybe it's the fact that I've never done this before. Just because you haven't done it before doesn't mean you can't. But to them, it's a huge mindset, because if I haven't done it before, how do I believe I can? well, what have you done maybe that's similar to that? You know, and I think that's what I do is help them with comparisons. You've done this, so you owned your own business. So, well, does that transfer to the business I'm in? Yeah, it does. You have to make that transferable. What did you sell? Who did you sell to? What did you accomplish? Our college year, the first 2 years, we went 62-6. And in those years, he never yelled at us. He yelled to us, like, get back, put your hands up. But it was never like, why did you let that guy go? And I realized the way he coached me allowed me to lean into it. And I think once you find a good coach, the best thing you can do is lean into it.
Yeah.
And you can be honest and say, hey, I'm struggling in this area. And then listen, because he's going to give you some insight and he'll help you by going, hey, have you tried this? Have you thought about this? Leaning into that, like you said, when you leaned into the mentor and he told you, you can do this, it immediately transformed you because you leaned into the coaching. And I think that's what one of the biggest challenges is there's so many coaches out there that people are like, well, I had a coach.
Okay. So you and your wife, you came to my hospital bed, and it was actually the second of 4 hospitals I was going to be at. I remember distinctly, you prayed over me, and you had I had never actually had an anointing with oil and all that stuff. And it was, I remember tears, whole thing, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. But that's when you shared with me that you were writing a book.
Yeah.
That it was going to be for, a lot of like business people. And I think you might have even told me it was called Resetting at the time. And I'm like, oh, very cool. And then I got back to church not too long ago, a couple months, because there was a few months where I couldn't go and stuff. And I knew your book was coming out, and I'd reached out to you about it. And then I think that's when I knew that the book was called Resetting. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting, because I've done exactly that in my life.
Yeah.
So where did you come up with like the resetting portion of it, and how did that come together?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we get stuff and we think, I don't know if this is good. So I got the beginning portion about 10 years ago. And I did about 4 chapters, and I thought, this is not good. And so I had a guy who kind of edited it for me, and then I went, that's not good. And so I started thinking about it when they asked me to, what the company I'm with, to do a book. I said, you know what, let me submit this. And they came back to me and said, I think this is very, very important for what people are coming out of the pandemic and some of the other things. A lot of people are really looking at their lives and looking at, how can I, be better? How can I reset for the future? What does that look like? And so I started getting into the idea of what would it look like if I really went through a process. In the beginning, it was more about the idea of it. And I thought, what would it look like if I really laid out a process for people? Because I want people to walk away with a book going, I have a pathway before me. I have steps I can take. It's not just a good idea. It's also something that I can use and change my life. And that really is big for me. I always am looking for, what is the bottom line application of how people can move into that? So as I began to sit down, and of course it's 10 chapters long, I'm like, I've got 4, that's 6 more chapters. I don't know if I can do this. And then it just started coming to me, and it came to me as like, and the idea came to me as an example of David in the Bible, who had blown it big time. I mean, he committed 4 atrocities that are just horrible. I mean, he coveted someone else's wife. He then had adultery with her. Then he went ahead and killed the husband. Then he lied about it and covered it up. And he did this for quite a while. And then when it kind of came out and he was confronted with this, it took him only 7 days to reset his life. And I thought, this is my model. This is what I think people need to hear, is that a reset is not years and years. It's like, oh man, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have done this. So it's going to take me 7 years to get it right. And I think that has kept us from really getting into the moment and going, if I walk through the process, David, who did 4 major mistakes, reset his life in 7 days. What would it look like if I reset my life? And that is for major things. I've got a podcast coming up where I'm going to talk about resetting after we lose a client. You know, a lot of business guys lose clients, businessmen and women, and it takes them weeks before they get back on to that place of confidence and being able to sell again. What would it look like if they had a process that the next day they could be back in the saddle and going, you know what, I'm ready to sell.
Mm-hmm.
What would that look like to reset? And it really caused me to kind of look at this as an overall view.
Formatting of reset, because, you know, boy, you were talking about Dave reset in 7 years. Well, David, you know, and we talked a little bit about this, but like if you think the old adultery, right? So it was Bathsheba, her husband had killed, they lost a baby, you know, you talk about that in the book. And then, he goes on to marry her.
Yep.
They have another baby, Solomon. Solomon in the Bible, wealthiest man of all time, makes a huge impact. And David's lineage obviously goes down all the way to Jesus, right?
Yeah.
That is total redemption and total generation, because he didn't dwell on something that he did.
Yeah.
He owned it, and then he repented of it, and then he moved on with life. And there's so many things I love in your chapter, actually, and I'll ask you about this, because you're talking about carrying something into another moment.
Yeah.
And share a little bit about that.
I've watched so many people carry part of their past into their future. And I don't mean in a positive way, I mean in a negative way. You know, I shouldn't have trusted. I trusted too much, so I'm not going to do that in the future. Or, you know, I told the truth and I got hurt, so I'm not going to do that in the future. Or I made too many friends, or I was too open. And all of those things are not the issue. The issue is things didn't work out. How can we reset? Otherwise, we're taking those lessons we learned in the past, which are not good lessons, and we're applying them to the future. You know, I've heard people say, well, I'm more guarded. I'm like, what did you lose when you became more guarded? Maybe you lost that ability to be open with people, which makes you a great businessman or woman, because you're open with people and they feel like, I can trust this guy. That's gone now, because I'm going to be more guarded because I got hurt and people took advantage of me. And instead of that, what if you said, you know what, I'm going to reset. And when I reset, I'm going to think differently. I'm going to see things differently, and I'm going to get emotionally connected to things differently. Yeah. Being able to do that, I think, allows you to learn from that and take only positive things into the future. And I'm a big believer in that. We can learn from our past, but the only thing I want to carry into the future are the positive things that can make me better. And I think we carry a lot of the negative things with us.
You played basketball growing up, and I know we talked about this a little bit, but what are some of the things you learned from the sports aspect of your life? Because I know I have. Follow me.
Yeah, it's a great question again. You know, I think that in basketball, some of the things, and I think, again, I had the privilege, many didn't. I had a horrible coach with a great group of guys. I had a great coach with a great group of guys. And I began to realize the difference of those two environments. But one of the things that was really stood out to me was the idea of team. You know, in a team, it's not about individuals. And I think today it's lost, and it's always, and even the way they, you know, when they advertise an upcoming NBA game, it doesn't do it so much in college, but in NBA, it's like, Jason Tatum against LeBron James. Right. And it's like, no. And it's not like it used to be, where it's like team means we're better because we allow people into our lives. And in business, you get better because you allow people into your lives. People bring things to your life that you normally wouldn't get if you weren't allowing them in. Like you said, you're talking with your buddy about heart health. That's because you changed, and because you're now in his life, that's going to add to his life something that he wouldn't even thought about. And so I learned that team is a very valuable part of life that you never get anywhere by yourself. And I think that people forget that. You know, and they think, well, I got here myself. No, you didn't. You may have forgotten who helped get you there. But if you remember, then you pass it on to the next generation. Right. You help the next people around you, because why? Because it's a team. And life is a team sport, I think. You know, it's better played together than apart.
It's about, God, man, I'm really blessed with this person and this person and this person. And, you know, there was another person that's not in my life anymore. I'm thankful for, but I was thinking about like, yeah, because I can talk to them about some things going on in my life and get some advice. Like, and trust them, and vice versa. They can do the same. And it's like that's a team aspect. That's a team sport.
Yeah,
and it's not. So I got that too, and I had some pretty good coaches.
Yeah,
they all yelled a lot, but they were all like good coaches. But like Coach Hastings is the one for me that made the biggest difference. Like I said, I think I told you before, like he gave me my nickname all through high school. It was Moose. And although I was an okay basketball player, I was a much better football player. And that's what they called me on the football team, Moose, and all this stuff. But what I liked about him is he was so direct.
Yeah.
He was direct, but he had nothing but the best intentions for the team.
Yeah.
But yeah, like sports are amazing because like they teach you things like work ethic, and that if you work hard for something, like you can get better. You talk, I think it's in your book, it might have been one of your sermons, but you were talking about kind of like growing into your body at one point.
Yeah.
And that was probably difficult because I'm 6. How tall are you?
Yeah, I talked about in the book, I said, and that was part of that reset, is, I grew so quick.
Mm-hmm.
It was unusual. I was 5'8" in 8th grade, and I grew to 6'2" by the end of 9th grade. And then I just kept growing, in high school. So by the time I finished my junior year in high school, I was 6'6". And when I thought, well, this is tall. Well, when you go to the next level, and I think this is the same kind of principle in business. When you go to the next level, you have to learn to play the game differently. And so in high school, I was 6'6". I was one of the tallest guys on the court, and I played with my back to the basket all the time. In college, the guy who's playing that position is 6'8", 6'9", 6'10". I'm not playing that position anymore. I'm playing the 4 position, which is power forward, with his facing the basket, shooting at 15 feet, pulling up, those kind of things. And it took me a whole year to relearn how to play the game because I've been so ingrained into playing a certain way.
Yeah.
I think business is the same way. Things shifted. Whether people want to agree with them or not, things shifted after the pandemic.
They did.
Business is done different now. And it's still changing. And so we have to learn to do it differently. We have to learn, how can I do it differently? One of the things I tell with guys that own their own business, I said, do you have a set time you're working? And again, I put in, and I said, no, set some boundaries so you have some margins. And I tell guys, if you're going to work 6 hours a day or 7 hours a day, that's what you're going to do, then make them be hard 7 hours. Like, I'm going to get up at 8, I'm going to work for 7 hours, and then I'm going to stop. And when I stop, that's it. I'm not going to worry about anything that happened in that day and carry. Next part of that day is a margin where I can enjoy my family, enjoy my kids, and maybe read a book, have some hard stop and starts. And I think that's valuable today.
Super valuable. Yeah. I mean, especially in culture today, right? We're leashed to our phone.
Yep.
Which means that if your job requires email, in your email notifications, and I remember distinctly, maybe 6 years ago, I had an executive assistant, amazing person. Like, she helped kind of like restructure my life at work, because I went from always thinking about it to where she took over my email. Yeah. And she's like, you were not checking this at night.
That's good.
I'm like, what do you mean I'm not checking it at night? Got a little twitchy. I'm like, what if somebody needs something? You ain't gonna help anybody at 9 o'clock at night, right? So she actually put this thing in place, and it was A, B, C, D, these folders. It's like, A, you need to pay attention to. B, just sometime within the week. C, I can't remember C. I never looked at C and D, ever. Not one time. But I'm like, that was really good for me, because it gave me these bumper rails of my time. Yeah. And I was then able to be more present. And I think, exactly what you said, if people can be like, this is when I work, and not always be thinking about it. And like, you're always thinking about it. Like, I'm an entrepreneur, have been forever. So it's not that I'm not thinking about my business necessarily, or I see something that triggers a thought, but then write it down and kind of go on with your business. Use your phone notes and, go on about it.
This is what I believe is missing too. Business entrepreneurs and business men and women have to be creative. Mm-hmm. When is that creative time? If you're still running your business, stop and start and market, you have no creative ability.
Yeah.
Which means eventually it catches up with you. And now you're borrowing from other people. That's not how you started your business. You started your business being creative.
Right.
And now you've lost that. So this restores that back, because I know when I stop at 5 in the afternoon, that means from 5 on, I'm spending with family, with loved ones, with friends, and also recharging my mind, allowing it to be creative. So it may be thinking about creative ideas, but it's not thinking about, I need to do this or I need to do that. It's not thinking about tasks anymore. What if I tried this in the business? That's actually going to keep you ahead of the curve by being creative.
Yeah, I like that. So I got to ask you, because this I observed a lot. We all did during COVID. What was it like being a pastor during COVID?
Wow. Yeah. Man, it is, I think it was, I don't think we ever learned to do it. I mean, we tried to do things, but if you're a kind of person like I am, where, you know, we can do a Zoom, but you're trying to read cues of people, which is different. Now, I've learned, I think I've gained skill in that, which has helped me coach people now. I coach people online. And I think that's what I learned out of COVID was how to read people over a Zoom. Where if you're in a room with someone, it's easy to read them. You can read when someone's not going to listen to you and they're like, And, you know, this person's not going to listen. Over Zoom, you're like, I can't read that person. So I think in one way it developed our skills to be able to read people better, but it also kept us from understanding. And I read a statistic, it just came out. It said, we are the loneliest generation. And I think because we need the interaction of other people. We need to meet with other people. You may be doing things online, you may be doing things in Zoom, but there has to be a part of your day where you're going to coffee with someone, or you're going to lunch with someone, where you're interacting. That's the way we were designed, was to have that face-to-face interaction.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know it was a difficult time, because I mean, Garrett just went online. I mean, I can't even imagine the behind the scenes you guys were working in to make that happen. And, you know, every business was worried about finances. I'm sure churches were worried about finances and all that. So yeah, it's pretty, I admired that. I mean, you guys made, I mean, I've been going to the church for 21 years now, 21 years, long time, back when it was City of Grace.
Wow.
And then Hillsong, Word of Grace originally, then City of Grace, then Hillsong, and now City of Grace. And I've seen all the transitions. I've seen all the good, the hard times, and all that. And like, just, I love watching our church because we've endured.
Yeah.
And I guess it was a couple years ago when, you know, there were some things that happened in the church, and watching how you and Pastor Terry and Jason and made a hard decision, a very, very difficult decision to go a direction that not a lot of other churches in the country went. And like, I admired that. And we won't talk about the crazy situation, but what goes through your mind as a pastor when you're making situations about taking an entire congregation a certain direction that you know it needs to pivot from?
Yeah, and a lot of that, you know, was upon the shoulders of Pastor Terry. We were to carry out that and make it work in our realms, which is huge, because I think every person is either, you know, they're going to, in business, you're going to have to carry out things that someone has given to you and said, hey, make this work. And your job is then to go, how can we make this work in such a manner that it becomes healthy in the process?
Right.
And I think that's what a big part of that whole process is how can we move forward and, you know, go forward with, and here's the thing I've found too, when you move forward, not everyone's going to come with you.
Right. Yeah.
And that's
a pruning
hard.
process.
Yeah. It's hard because in your, you know, as a business owner, you believe that your business practice and who you have with you in your business is going to be a part of your future.
Yep.
And then you may decide we're going to start selling, you know, we're going to do some annuities, but we're going to do life insurance, and we're going to also sell some securities. And some people are like, I don't want to sell securities. You know, I don't want to learn that license. I don't want to. And you go, this is going to benefit you. This is going to be better for you. But you just have some people that their mindset is such that, I just can't go forward. I can't move forward with you. And I think that's hard because as a business owner, you see everyone going because you see the benefit of it.
Right.
Same in the church. And you realize not everyone is, and there's a lot of reasons. And I think that's hard too, is can we let people decide to get off and not get upset?
Right.
I think that's hard.
Yeah, that's a good point, because like in business, and we've all got does that ever get easier? Yeah, because I've been self-employed since 2008, long time, and I've had some people certainly in my other company that were with me for a while, and nobody ever left unamicably, but when they left, I'm like,
Yeah.
thought they were going to be here for a while, and I got to replace this, and it was just always very tough, but it always ended up working out better. It was very interesting. Like I love the pruning parable in the Bible, because that's really how plants thrive.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's sometimes we go through these processes that hurt and we don't understand, and we're pruning, and then it's like 5 years down the line, you look back like, wow, thank goodness that happened, because if that hadn't happened, all these things that have happened since couldn't have. And I feel like our church has done a lot of that. Like Easter was just this past Sunday, so depending on when you're listening to this, but I can't recollect a time where I've seen it as packed. Even in Easter, I'm talking probably 2018, 2017. It was jam packed this weekend. It was phenomenal.
Yeah. It's funny you talk about that pruning. I've got a great story.
Yeah.
So when I moved to Arizona, we had in front of our house this bird of paradise.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have a lot of them where I grew up in the ocean, in California. They weren't like, this is what you're going to put in your front yard. So it was quite big, and I'm like, you know what? I know what you do. You prune things back, and they'll grow back, but they won't be as big.
Mm-hmm.
And so I chopped that baby down to, it probably was about 2.5 feet off the ground and not very wide. And I thought, okay, this will be good. When it comes back, it'll be the right size. It won't get out of control. When it came back, it was bigger than it was before. I didn't realize that the plant's DNA was such that the more it prunes back, the bigger it becomes.
Yeah.
And I think we're the same. I think human beings are the same. When we prune out of our lives the things that are not supposed to happen, we actually set ourselves up for huge growth in the next season because it's built within us.
I love that. Yeah. Well, before we wrap up, and we'll talk about where you can get the book. It was my son's birthday was yesterday, Joshua, and I don't even know where this came from necessarily, but my daughter had a little card, and it said, what 3 words you would say to your 18-year-old self? And it was me, my wife, she asked, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law were there. And I was like, man, what a cool question.
Yeah.
And mine was believe in yourself.
Yeah.
Right. But what would you tell your 18-year-old self in 3 words?
Life will change.
Life will change.
Yeah. I think we look at it and go, this is all I am. This is all I have. And years go by and we go, wow, I had so much more in the tank. I had so much more I could do. I'm glad I didn't stop at this is all I can do. And I think that is really the definition of humanity is we won't know how much we utilized until we leave this earth.
Right.
But what if we really worked hard on stop limiting ourselves by limiting what we think about ourselves and the value of ourselves?
It's amazing. Well, this was a lot of fun. I'm really glad we got a chance to do this before your book launches. And thank you for getting me an early copy, because I bought 9 others, given several away. If you actually DM me, I'm actually going to give away 5 copies that I have to anybody who DMs me. They're going to go into a pot, and I will send one to you. But if you're not one of those lucky 5, you can still be a lucky person. Purchases on Amazon, right?
There's actually 3 places you can get it. Amazon is the best.
No.
But Amazon, and then you can also get it on Walmart.com online and Barnes & Noble. but Amazon's probably where I would go. And you can order it right now, and it becomes live on April 9th. And so when you order it after April 9th, they'll send it to you right away.
Perfect. And then you mentioned something about the QR.
Oh, yeah. So we've got this amazing thing I did right here. It's got a QR code here. If you hit this, it'll actually take you to a landing page. Well, I'll talk a little bit more about some of the ideas of coaching. And should you decide, there's an opportunity to do a 15-minute free coaching call with me and just kick the tires. You know, it's kind of like a test drive. See if I can help you. See if we can make your life better and just grow your life to the highest potential.
Yeah, guys, that's a huge value. I know what his time is worth, and 15 minutes is worth a lot. So take him up on that. Appreciate you all tuning in. Pastor Randy, thank you.
My pleasure.
See you guys.